Here.
Mr. De Leon,
Here.
Mr. Ferrara,
Here.
Mr. Kuhar,
Here.
Ms. Rosenberg,
Here.
Mr. Schaefer Bish,
Here.
Mr. Sidoti,
Here.
and Ms. Wallach.
Here.
Mr. Turner has to be excused. I need a motion.
Move to excuse Mr. Turner.
Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
second.
Second by Gwen. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Mr. Sidoti, you have opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, the beautiful day today, I don't know how many had the opportunity to get out. I made a point of getting out a lot, and especially looking for people who are out and about, who are older people who have been kind of confined to home because of the virus. I would encourage everyone that we need to be very careful with the pandemic. We got to continue to mask up. We got to continue to do those things. But on the other side of the coin, I think reaching out to other people from 20 feet across, or in one case, I was yelling like 2 yards across and waving to people. There was something good about that. And there's something about what we are in Kent, Ohio, because we do that. And that includes strangers, just merely saying it's a beautiful day. Talking about the weather gives us an opportunity to be that engaging, be those engaging people that we are. And I would encourage all of our viewers today out there, all of our citizens, that, reach out. It's important. I think it's important to everyone's well-being. And secondly, while I'm speaking of that, I am so glad I've been tracking as best I can the number of people who have been watching our city council meetings. Now, I don't know. I'm so tired of Zoom. I'd like to slash my wrists, I think. It goes crazy because I'm in the middle of a million other things. On the other side of the coin, those of you who were on the bus trips when we were looking at city halls, if you remember, one of our number one priorities was to stream. And we got some pushback, but I think it causes, sometimes uncomfortably, great conversation with people having access to our meetings, having access to all the meetings in the city, that they don't necessarily have to get in a car, drive over, and sit in a meeting. I think they can watch, they can learn. I think it's very American and very democratic. So I would hope that we would continue to do this even when we're able to be in person. With that said, would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which
it stands,
one
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That was
All right, Roger, I need a motion for the minutes and public hearings.
Yeah, I'd like to move the minutes of the regular city council meeting of February 17th, the public hearing of February 17th, and the public hearing of March 3rd, all in 2021.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kuhar. Is there any discussion on any of that? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Same sign. One abstention. All right, under communications, public communications. Amy, did anybody sign in for the record?
Yes, we have one person signed in, Angela from Fair Housing, and I believe she is on this call.
You're muted, Angela. Hello.
Hello.
All right,
Hello.
I need to read something first to make this all legal. By the law, does not require constituted time for public comment. We historically invite the public to make comment, and we appreciate their input. This is the time where residents and others can comment on matters that concern them. However, if we will not engage in any debate. As president of council, I reserve the right to end any public comment that is disruptive, embarrassment, harass, or otherwise objectionable. We ask that you give your name for the record and your address, and you have 3 minutes. Welcome aboard, Angela.
Thank you. So is that giving me permission to speak? This is new to me.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead. You're on.
All
You're a
right.
star.
Good evening. My name is Angela Smith, and I am the Education Outreach Coordinator for Fair Housing Contact Service. And the reason why I'm here this evening is just to kind of remind you that we are still around. We're a civil rights nonprofit agency. We're located in Summit County, Akron, Ohio. And we've been serving the city of Kent and Portage County maybe about 30 years now. And we've been in existence since 1965. So basically, I just wanted to let you know or remind you of some of the services that we are providing. We do have a housing discrimination program, whereas we will help clients file a complaint if they have a complaint against a property manager or landlord or anybody that falls under the Fair Housing Act and they feel as though that they're being discriminated against because of one of the 7 protected classes. We also provide home counseling services, such as reverse mortgages for seniors 62 and over. We also provide default foreclosure prevention counseling, homebuyer education, first-time homebuyer education counseling, and refinancing information. So if anybody's thinking about refinancing their loan, we can talk to them about that, and we can also assist them with their budgeting. We also provide tenant and landlord counseling. So we have we have workshops for landlords and we have workshops for tenants. I've done several workshops for landlords over the past maybe 15 years within the city of Kent. Right before COVID, I believe it was 1 tenant landlord and 1 landlord. 1 tenant presentation and 1 landlord presentation. We are going to be conducting 2 workshops virtually, which I will send the information out to the city of Kent for residents. Because a lot of times, because of this pandemic and everything, a lot of tenants are facing a lot of concerns and issues with rent and with getting repairs and everything done. So we want to make sure that we educate them and talk to them, make sure that they are armed with the knowledge to be able to do what they need to do to not get evicted. We also provide education and outreach, which is what I do. So I'm always coming into the city of Kent to talk to some of the partners there, some of the nonprofit agencies, just to remind them of what we do and to answer any questions. And we also will provide CEUs for counselors or social workers that are also in the area. So basically, that is all that I have for everybody. Does anybody have any specific questions or concerns that they may have, or something that maybe some of your residents have been asking about?
Are there any questions? Mr. Sidoti?
Roger.
Yes, I'm just kind of curious, Angela, do you have any workshops for landlords?
Yes, we, as a matter of fact, we had one on evictions a few months ago. I am in the process of getting another landlord workshop. I do more landlord workshops than tenant workshops because a lot of landlords are very hungry for the information. Tenants don't really show up. A lot of tenants, by the time they call us, the eviction has already been filed and the court date has already been set. So once I schedule another landlord workshop, which should be within the next few months, I would definitely provide that information. I've stayed in contact with the city of Kent, and the last 2 that I had, they were at the Kent Library maybe 2 years ago.
All right.
We had probably maybe about 12 or 15 landlords.
Okay, thank you, Angela.
You're welcome.
All right, we're going to move on to written comments. Amy?
Civil service agenda for February 22nd was received on February 19th, 2021. Civil service exam notice for juvenile counselor was received on March 4th. Standing Rock Cemetery Board meeting minutes from February 11th and agenda for March 12th was received on March 2nd. The Board of Health meeting agenda and statistical report for March 9th and Health Board minutes for February 9th was received on March 8th, 2021. An NAACP letter in response to the March 3rd Kent City Council meeting was received on March 7th and forwarded to all city council members. A letter from Jennifer Mapes regarding comments on March 3rd regarding the use of the Parta building received on March 8th and forwarded to all city council members. I then received communication after the agenda was published. I received the Parks and Recreation Board packet for March 18th, and that was received on March 12th, 2021.
Okay, thank you. Moving in city manager's report, Mr. Amrine,
Yeah, I'd like to move items 1 through 11 on the city manager's report.
there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Gwen. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, Mr. Orr, you have anything further?
No, that's it tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Moving into standing committees. Under committee of the whole, there's nothing to take care of tonight. Land use, Mr. Ferrer. Garrett, you're muted.
Land use, I've moved to approve the committee meeting minutes of March 3rd, 2021. And would anyone like those actions separated?
Yeah.
Okay, so just the committee minute meeting.
All right, is there a second? Second by Mr. DeLeon. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same.
Abstain.
One abstention. All right, the action.
Yep,
here.
there's one action to authorize the renewal of the sublease for the farmer's market and partial closure of Franklin Avenue.
Second.
Second by Heidi, Ms. Schaefer, bitch. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you.
One draft.
Would the clerk read draft number 2021-020 in title only?
Draft number 2021-20, an ordinance authorizing the city manager or his designee to renew the agreement with the Haymaker Farmers Market for the subland lease of a parking lot located north of Summit Street, west of Franklin Avenue, and east of Akron Barberton Cluster Railway Company's main line track containing 0.168 acres for the period of April 3rd, 2021 through November 27th, 2021, contingent on the continuation of the city's lease with the Akron Barberton Cluster Railway Company for the amount of $1 and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Bitch. Please call the roll for suspension.
Mr. Amrine,
Yes.
Mr. DeLeon,
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar,
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
and Ms. Wallach.
Yes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Second by who? Heidi?
Aye.
All right. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Amrine,
Yes.
Mr. DeLeon,
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar,
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
and Ms. Wallach.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2021-20 has passed.
Okay, thank you. That's it for land use, health and public safety, Mr. Amrine.
Yes, I'd like to move the committee meeting minutes from March 3rd, 2021.
Second.
Second by Roger. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same
Abstain.
sign, and one
Abstain.
abstention.
I'd like to move the one action recommended.
Second.
Second by Heidi. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Passes. All right. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-021 in title only?
Draft number 2021-21, an ordinance amending chapter 527 of the codified ordinances of the city of Kent by enacting section 527.04, requiring all tobacco retailers within the city to post the phone number for the tobacco quit line at all point of sale locations and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second by Roger. Please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. De Leon,
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar,
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Ms. Wallach,
Yes.
and Mr. Amrine.
Yes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Second by Roger. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. De Leon,
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar,
Yes.
Rosenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Ms. Wallach,
Yes.
and Mr. Amrine.
Yes.
Ordinance 2021-21 is passed.
Okay, thank you. That's all for health and public safety. Streets and sidewalks, Mr. Sidoti.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the committee meeting minutes of March 3rd, 2021.
Second.
Second by Gwen. Is there any discussion on? Seeing none, does somebody have discussion?
No.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Further? Roger,
Yeah, I'd like to move the two actions that were recommended.
second to that?
I'll second.
Gwen, second that. Is there any discussion on the actions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-022?
Draft number 2021-022, an ordinance amending ordinance number 2020-54, approving the temporary license agreements for outdoor patio dining areas and extending the date until December 31st, 2021, or until the lifting of all restrictions related to COVID-19 and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second by Roger. Please call the roll for suspension.
Mr. Ferrara,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar,
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Ms. Wallach,
Yes.
Mr. Amrine,
Yes.
and Mr. De Leon.
Yes.
Need a motion? Garrett made the motion for adoption. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Roger. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Ferrara,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar,
Abstain.
Ms. Rosenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Ms. Wallach,
Yes.
Mr. Amrine,
Yes.
and Mr. De Leon.
Yes.
Okay, the ordinance 2021-22 has passed.
Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-023 in title only?
Draft number 2021-023, an ordinance authorizing the water tap-in for Mod Car Wash located at 1788 State Route 59 outside the city of Kent and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second.
Second by Garrett. Please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Kuhar,
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Ms. Wallach,
Yes.
Mr. Amrine,
Yes.
Mr. De Leon,
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yes. Move adoption.
Second.
Second. Mike, I think you second that. Is there any discussion on adopting this? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Kuhar,
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish, we lose Heidi?
She's muted.
Oh,
I know, I'm trying. Yes.
let's see. Yes. Okay. Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Ms. Wallach,
Yes.
Mr. Amrine,
Yes.
Mr. De Leon,
Yes.
and Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Ordinance 2021-23 is passed.
All right, that's all for streets and sidewalks. Finance Committee, Mr. DeLeon.
I have a question for Amy first. The S and the A next to the drafts, what's that for?
That's for me.
Oh,
That's my cliff notes.
oh.
So that's-
Well, could you share that with
Suspension
me?
and adoption.
Suspension and adoption. I
Okay,
realize for you guys, for you new.
I was trying to
town on
figure out.
console-
S.
For the new town on console, I understand why you would ask that.
I could
I don't
understand
normally put that on council's copy.
the S and A.
Oh,
Okay.
Amy, don't let them have it anymore.
Okay,
right.
no problem.
Well, I was confused. All right, I'll move the committee meeting minutes of April or March 3rd.
Before,
2021.
excuse me, before we go in that committee, can I redo my vote on 022 to yes?
Was that just,
Where's Hope? Help, Hope. She here?
She's,
I think,
Here. John has to make a motion to reconsider.
Yeah, that was I thinking.
I want to make a motion to reconsider my vote to yes.
second that.
Second that.
Row 22.
All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Thank
So that's a done deal. We don't have to read the ordinance again, John?
Hmm.
We don't have to read the ordinance to you again? All right, moving on.
Unless it
Finance
makes you
Committee,
happy.
Mr. DeLeon.
all right. Now that the dog quit barking. I want to move the committee meeting minutes from March 3rd.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the minutes? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Abstain.
One abstention. Opposed? All right. All in favor signify by
There's
saying.
5 actions. Is
Already did that. Move on, Mike.
Yeah.
John, you got me
There's
messed up.
5 actions.
Mike,
There's 5 actions.
could you remove number 4 on that? And move
Do it separately?
Separately, yeah, please.
Okay. There was no cliff notes on there for that, Jerry?
No.
Okay, I'm going to move items 1, 2, 3, and 5.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Roger. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Back to you, Mike.
I will move item 4.
Second.
Second by Heidi. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Opposed, and one abstention by Jack. All right. With the
We have
clerk,
a number of drafts.
with the clerk read draft number 2021-024 in title only.
Draft number 2021-024, an ordinance authorizing the city manager or his designee to enter into a loan agreement with the Ohio EPA's Division of Environmental and Financial Assistance to complete the construction of the Southwest Sanitary Sewer Pump Station project and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second by Garrett. Please call the roll for suspension.
Ms. Rosenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Ms. Wallach,
Yes.
Mr. Amrine,
Yes.
Mr. De Leon,
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara,
Yes.
and Mr. Kuhar.
Yes.
Okay, hey, Mike, now
Yeah,
you put a mark next to yes, so we know we did that. We
gotcha.
need a motion for adoption.
Moving
Aye.
on.
Who made the motion?
I did. Garrett.
Who
Second.
seconded? it? Second by Roger. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Ms. Rosenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yep.
Ms. Wallach,
Yes.
Mr. Amrine,
Yes.
Mr. De Leon,
Yes.
Ferrara,
Yes.
and Mr. Kuhar.
Yes.
Ordinance 2021-024 has passed.
Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-25 entitled Lily?
Draft number 2021-25, an ordinance authorizing the city manager or his designee to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the City of Kent Parks and Recreation Department to return funds to the city for a loan necessary to complete the Portage Bike and Hike Trail Brady's Leap segment project and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second by Mike. Please call the roll on suspension.
Schaefer Bish,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Ms. Wallach,
Yes.
Mr. Amrine,
Yes.
Mr. De Leon,
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar,
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg.
Yes.
Okay.
Move
Move it
adoption.
up. Second.
Second by Mike. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Schaefer Bish,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Ms. Wallach,
Yes.
Mr. Amrine,
Yes.
Mr. De Leon,
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar,
Yes.
and Ms. Rosenberg.
Yes.
Ordinance 2021-025 is passed.
Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-026 entitled only?
Draft number 2021-026, an ordinance accepting and authorizing the city manager or his designee to execute a right-of-way agreement for the purpose of attaining temporary and permanent easements for the construction of the Southwest Sanitary Pump Station project and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second by Gwen. Please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Ms. Wallach,
Yes.
Mr. Amrine,
Yes.
De Leon,
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar,
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish.
Yes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Second.
Second by Gwen. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Ms. Wallach,
Yes.
Mr. Amrine,
Yes.
Mr. De Leon,
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar,
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish.
Yes.
Ordinance 2021-026 is passed.
Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-027 entitled only?
Draft number 2021-027, an ordinance authorizing the city manager or his designee to amend the lease agreement with PARTA and the City of Kent Health Department to continue the lease to 201 East Erie Street and add to the leased ground floor for clinical purposes and declaring an emergency.
Move
Move
suspension.
suspension. Second.
Second by Gwen. Please call the roll on the suspension.
Ms. Wallach,
Yes.
Mr. Amrine,
Abstain.
Mr. De Leon,
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar,
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish,
Yes.
and Mr. Sidoti.
Yes. Move adoption.
Second.
Second by Garrett. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Got my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that at the last committee meeting, we all agreed that this appeared to be a positive move for making this vital service more visible and accessible to the residents and anyone else who may need this important service. So I stand behind that, and I hope this ends up coming to pass.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else? Amy, please call the roll for adoption.
Ms. Wallach,
Yes.
Mr. Amrine,
Abstain.
Mr. De Leon,
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar,
Abstain.
Ms. Rosenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish,
Yes.
and Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2021-027 is passed.
Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-021-28, title only?
Draft number 2021-028, an ordinance authorizing the city manager or his designee to secure no-pet grant funds that are available to the city up to $49,978 to use for energy-saving related investments and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second by Gwen. Please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Amrine,
Yes.
Mr. De Leon,
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar,
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
and Ms. Wallach.
Yes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Second by Gwen. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Amrine,
Yes.
Mr. De Leon,
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar,
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
and Ms. Wallach.
Yes.
Ordinance 2021-028 is passed.
Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-029 in title only?
Draft number 2021-029, an ordinance accepting a donation in the amount of $50 to the City of Kent Fire Department from John and Nancy Thomas in honor/memory of former Kent Fire Chief Bud Rhodes and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second by Roger. Please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. De Leon,
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar, Mr. Kuhar,
I said yes.
oh, sorry, Ms. Rosenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Ms. Wallach,
Yes.
and Mr. Amrine.
Yes.
Need a motion for adoption.
So
Move
moved.
adoption. Second.
Second by Garrett. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Let's call the roll for adoption.
Mr. De Leon,
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar,
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Ms. Wallach,
Yes.
and Mr. Amrine.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2021-029 has passed.
Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-030 in title only?
Draft number 2021-030, an ordinance accepting 2 donations to the City of Kent Health Department and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second by Gwen. Please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Ferrara,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar,
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Ms. Wallach,
Yes.
Mr. Amrine,
Yes.
and Mr. De Leon.
Yes.
Open for adoption.
Move adoption.
Second.
Second by Mike. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Ferrara,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar,
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Ms. Wallach,
Yes.
Mr. Amrine,
Yes.
and Mr. De Leon.
Yes.
Draft number ordinance 2021-030 has passed.
Okay, thank you. That's it for Finance Committee. We're gonna move into Community Development. Mr. Kuhar.
Yes, I would like the committee meeting minute approval for March 3rd.
Second.
Second by Mike. Are you gonna, any discussion on it? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Abstain.
Opposed, and one abstention.
And it says no actions, but there is an action in there.
Draft.
Draft. Read draft number 2021-031 in title only.
Draft number 2021-031, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to amend the right of access agreement with ABB Installation Products, Inc. for site remediation at 800 Mogador Road that was passed in ordinance 2019-106 to allow access to 2 additional off-property areas of interest, OPAI 03 and OPAI 06, and declaring an emergency.
Of suspension.
Second,
Second by Gwen. Please call the roll for suspension.
Mr. Kuhar,
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg,
yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Ms. Wallach,
Yes.
Mr. Amrine,
Yes.
Mr. De Leon,
Yes.
and Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Second by Garrett. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Kuhar,
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Ms. Wallach,
Yes.
Mr. Amrine,
Yes.
Mr. De Leon,
Yes.
and Mr. Ferrara.
Yes.
Ordinance 2021-031 is passed.
Okay, thank you. That's it for community development. Is there any unfinished business we need to discuss? Any new business? Councilperson's comment? Tracy, where are you?
Yeah. Okay, ready?
Yeah, go.
So I just wanted to make a comment on what Roger said about waving hi to people outside and stuff like that. When I was in New York City, I was walking down the sidewalk with a friend of mine who grew up in New York, and people came by and I'd nod my head and say, hi, how you doing? And move on and say, hi, how you doing? He turned to me and he said, what do you think? You're in Ohio or something?
That's great.
Did
That's
you
great.
say Kent, Ohio?
That's cool. Is there anybody else?
Yeah.
Jack.
Yeah, I just want to clarify something. The reason I abstain when anything deals with part is because my wife's the general manager. I received some calls last meeting wondering why I abstained, and it's because there's a conflict because she is the general manager and negotiates, was part of the negotiation team with Elise. So,
Okay, thank you, Jack. Anybody else have any comments? Mr. Kuhar.
Yeah. You watch the numbers and thank God the virus numbers are going down and down and down. But I think some people are thinking that it's gone away and we don't have to take the same precautions. I was looking out my window here in Key West, and there goes a pickup truck with 10 people in the back pulling a wagon with 25 people with green hats on. And I thought I was back home in Kent again. And we still have to take some consciousness and some seriousness to protect ourselves and others against this virus until it says 0 for a number of cases. Because you got to remember, this whole thing started with just 2 or 3 people crossing the border. And there's still some here with it. So I've had 2 shots and everything else, but I'm still cautious.
Okay, anybody else? Any more comments? All right, moving into the mayor's report. With the fake St. Patrick's Day, I was downtown and it seemed pretty orderly. I realized the lines going into the cocktail lounges, they didn't have their masks on. There might have been a problem there, but I'm telling you, it's Friday night, I was in Ray's for a little going away party. There was only 10 of us, and I just stood up. I didn't have my mask on. And the manager from Ray's came over and gave me a mask. It couldn't have been a split second. I had my mask in my pocket, and before I could get it out, he was standing there asking if I needed a mask. So I think the downtown establishments are working with the people, and I think that's great. The other thing, and I'm going to brag about my grandson, Drew Greenwald, he earned his Eagle Award for scouting last night. And for a young adult under 18, that's quite an achievement. And I'm kind of proud of him because 60 years ago, his grandfather got his in 1961. So that's kind of a neat thing in my family. So that's all I have. Does anybody else have anything?
Good job.
If not,
Congratulations.
we're going to go into executive session. Jack, will you read the motion, please?
Yes, I'd like to move an executive session in accordance with Ohio Revised Code, paragraph 121.22, section G, item 1, to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official.
There a second?
Second,
Roll call, Amy. You're muted.
you muted, Amy.
Mr.
There
Amrine,
she is.
Yes.
Mr. De Leon,
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar,
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer Bish,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Yes.
Mr. Turner, and Ms.
Not
Swam.
here.
Yes.
Hey, Mr. Turner needs excused for tonight, so somebody want to make a motion?
So
Make
moved.
a motion to excuse Mr. Turner.
Second.
Second by Mike. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Hi.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Council needs to be in executive session around the hall. Hope Jones and Suzanne Smith,